Hey everybody, this is Renee Clement Toussaint, DJ Think, and I have a channel called the National Media Museum. So on that, I'm going to be posting um, tutorials, and as I had just described to you, I'm going to discuss 5 different pieces of software that you can use in conjunction with one another um, to achieve a desired result for content creation. This is going to be a generalized discussion, so you can apply it to any situation pretty much. Um, as long as you tailor what you're doing in the software to your needs. So, welcome to Lessons by the National Media Museum, Part 1, 1974. That's the year of my birth. So, we have Adobe Animate, Houdini, which is created by Side Effects Software, and Greg Hermanovic. Machina, which is made by Native Instruments. Ableton Live, which is a cousin of Native Instruments and Machina, and Adobe Premiere. So let's just tackle Adobe Animate for the first one, because that's what it says right here, the first line, first plus sign. We're going to go through the user interface, drawing objects on the stage, symbols, importing footage to the stage versus the library, exporting footage, publishing Adobe Air for Android or desktop, audio settings, exporting and installing to Android tablet, ActionScript 3.0, code snippets, and simplifying the code. So let's go ahead and dive into Adobe Animate. This is the welcome screen. I'm not going to relaunch the application, but this is the welcome screen that you get when you start up Adobe Animate, and you have presets up here. So because we're going to be doing ActionScript 3.0 stuff for my lessons, I want to go to advanced, and in order to get these Air for Android, Air for desktop, and Air for iOS, you have to consult your resources to figure out how to do that, because what you end up doing is and let me go ahead and create an Air for Android, and let me make it wide. So I'll create it, and basically you have, where is this? Commands. Manage Adobe Air SDK. You can basically get your Adobe Air SDK from a resource that Adobe points you to. Make sure you get the official resource from Adobe and not anywhere else, because you don't want to get a third-party Adobe Air which is going to compromise your system. You want to get it officially from Harman, which is a Samsung company, but you want to go through Adobe to do that because they have the proper links. So and I'm not gonna, I can't get online right now with this system, so I can't show you. But the user interface has tools on the shelf here, and not all of these tools are visible by default. So like if you hover over this and click, you and hold on to the click by pressing a mouse down, you get the selection tool and sub-selection tool. And I invite you to go through all of these tools, especially the ones with the additional tools embedded within that one icon. The pen tool, this is similar to Illustrator. In fact, Macromedia Flash, which was the second version of this product after your very first prototype, which I don't remember the name of, but um, it's an old technology, but very advanced, and it basically builds on Adobe Illustrator, um, and gives Adobe Illustrator a timeline. And the timeline in Adobe Animate is so far ahead of its time that this product, Harmony 24, which is, it's in the 2024, but it's been around for quite some time, um, and it borrows its timeline from Macromedia Flash, which became Adobe Flash, Adobe Flash Professional, and then now it's Adobe Animate. So let's just draw something on the stage, because I said that I wanted to. I'm gonna bring this down here so I can refer to it. I can just maximize it if I need to. Let me see. Can I get it? Yeah. So we want to draw objects on the stage. I happen to have a stylus with this laptop, and it should by default have it set up correctly for you when you install Adobe Animate. But in case it doesn't, you have to go to the preferences and make sure that you're using Windows Ink if you have a more modern laptop. So this is the brush tool. I think, yeah, that's a classic brush. You got a newer paintbrush, which is different than the one that had that than the one that was in Adobe Flash Professional CS6. I can't even launch that application anymore. It's got an end of life, and basically they want you to have a subscription. The same thing with Adobe After Effects. Like, those are two powerhouses, so they figured they could earn some revenue by turning that into a subscription. It's unfortunate because subscriptions are very expensive in the long run. So one thing you can do with Adobe Animate that you can't readily do in Adobe Illustrator is you can block off sections like this and then go to the paint bucket tool, and let's choose a different color here just for kicks, and you see how the mathematics gets the intersection right there. It's pretty complicated to code, but somebody must have used a little bit of calculus and things like that to get these curves and figured out how they can block off sections with math. In any case, it all comes down to pixels and something called blitting, making sure that when you're using methods to draw vectors, in the background it gets converted to pixels. In some instances, depending on what tool you're using. I don't know enough about the deep side of Adobe Animate, but from what I researched for my own thesis application, when I was coding drawing functionalities and things like that, there's ways to optimize drawing so that you blit with pixels. That way you can also save your data, because saving vector information is not as easy as it is to save PNG information with the PNG encoder. That's available on GitHub. I forgot who coded it, but you could potentially, if you're good enough with computers and computer science, you could code your own ActionScript encoder for rasterizing data and saving it to the hard drive. So anyway, there are ways to animate this. So let me just briefly go into that because it's going to touch on the timeline, and timeline is important to what we're talking about. Part of the user interface is knowing how to navigate. So you can change between standard, preview and context, and you can make your timeline shorter or taller, medium, and combine these things. You may want to have tall because if you have actions listed here, for example, let's say I have this is a keyframe, this dot on the bottom. But when I bring up actions, and let's just put a stop action here, which prevents the timeline from advancing. Now you're gonna see, you should see a little white A right here, lowercase a. It looks like the A from Facebook, the newer Facebook A, not the original one, which looked better. Because you see up here this A in the word commands, it's got an ascender that hooks over the bull. Let me show that to you real quick, since I'm into typography. So this is just a quick aside, a lesson into typography. And this ascender up here, I forgot what this is actually called in the A. It must be called something different, but A's, E's, G's, O's, they've got different expressions. Like for example, an E, can I get another? This part of the E, which is enclosed in the semicircle, that's called the I. Why? Because the word I begins with the letter E, and you can make googly faces with this thing, and it's a sort of like a play on words. And language quite often does come down to playfulness, because it's easy to remember things like I think the word is called mnemonics or something. I'm not sure, but I'm not that skilled with English or with languages. But in a G, the G has a bowl, I believe, from what I remember. It's been many years since I studied this stuff in depth. So we just place some things on a stage. How do we animate them? Well, everything is on stage at the same time, and if I animate this now by right-clicking and inserting a keyframe and moving this around, let's see what happens, because I remember I had a problem with this before, and I'm not sure if this got updated in the new versions of Flash, Adobe Animate, or if it's still going to present a problem where you have to separate objects according to their own timelines, their own layers on the timeline. So I've got one layer with 3 letters and multiple other objects. Let's create a classic tween for those letters. The selected frame span cannot be tweened. You must convert frame content to a symbol in order to tween. Do you want to convert and create a tween? Okay, hit cancel, because what I want to do is do this manually myself. So I want to modify and convert to symbol. We can leave the default symbol 1, and we can give it an instance name. We'll give it an instance name of letter underscore A. We'll convert this to symbol 2. We'll make this letter E. And I left it that way because I want you to see that you don't have to name the instance in the library the same that you do for the actual instance name that's on the stage. Like you can pull multiple E's out on the stage, and it still refers to symbol 2, but this is gonna be E2, and this is gonna be letter E, and you can't use a dash. You have to use an underscore or nothing at all. In fact, I'll make this a camel case and make it letter E3. So typically, if you're gonna have items on the stage, it's good to use consistent naming conventions. So if this is letter E, I'm gonna name this letter E1. I'm gonna rename this to letter E2, and I'm gonna name this to letter E3. Okay, and there's reasons why you do that, because it simplifies your workflow when you have to code, and it gives you consistency in your mind. Like, you know, it's easy to reference things. You don't get confused as to what you named what. It's I forgot the name of this thing called. It's a naming convention, but it's a specific type of naming convention. In any case, so you see here it automatically added these items to the stage. I'm sorry, it automatically added a keyframe here when I dragged them out when my play bar was right here. In the old version of Flash, this play bar was red, now it's blue. So let's see what happens if we create a classic tween now. The selected, okay, so we did not, what did it do? Okay, so these items don't have these items are not symbolized. So let's make these into symbols, and I'll use a shortcut F8, and that's gonna be, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't did we convert that to a symbol? Okay, so the symbols were only created here. So let's, got a funny computer here. So let's make that letter G, and that was letter A. Okay. So if we go here, these aren't letters. I mean, these aren't symbols. So let's do something unconventional and convert this to a symbol, and we'll give it the same instance name. You're gonna see what I'm doing in a second. Notice that the library item is symbol 5 here, but the library item here is symbol 2, but I've given it an instance name of letter E1. So let's go here and give this an instance name of letter E1. And let's make this that's dynamic text. So if you give that an instance name, it's not going to be the same thing as a symbol instance name. So we have to convert that to a symbol, and we'll name this letter G. And then in the last keyframe, we're going to do the same thing. And I've never done this before, so I don't know what to expect. But you see, a lot of times with problem solving, oh wait, that did not work. Edit, undo. Let's undo all of that. Okay. So a lot of times you don't know what to expect with problem solving, and when you run into a problem the first time, that's the best time to try and discuss it with somebody on the fly, because you realize that person also realizes that the two of you are discovering a solution at the same time and discovering it together. So this is going to be letter A. Again, I don't know what to expect because I'm not sure if I have to use the same symbol from the library, or if I can change things around. And I'm gonna demonstrate what that entails in a second, and why that might or might not be a problem. Just stick with me for a second. So now I've got symbols for everything except these guys. So let's let me move this out of the way. I just hit undo there. So let me move this out of the way. You have to be on a keyframe in order to move that keyframe. Otherwise, when you move, it'll create a new keyframe. Okay, so this, I'm just going to convert this into a symbol. And here, I'm going to convert this to a symbol. And here, I'm going to convert this to a symbol. Why am I doing this 3 times? It's because there's 3 separate keyframes. And with keyframes, the advantage is that you don't have to stick your thinking into a single solitary box. You can have a symbol on one frame and the next frame have it be a shape and do a different kind of tween. That's the reason why that flexibility exists. Now that I've got symbols for everything, I should be able to create a classic tween. The selected frame spans cannot be tweened. You must convert frame content to a symbol. Okay, what have I not converted to a symbol? What have I not converted to a symbol? What's missing? This is all symbols. That's a symbol. That's a symbol. Let's give this an instance name and see if that changes things. Instance 3. I'll just give this the same thing, instance 3. And I'm gonna break that in a little while to show you what happens when you don't use consistent naming conventions. Is it called parallel naming? No. I cannot remember. The selected frame spans cannot be tweened. You must convert frame content to a symbol in order to tween. I don't want to do it automatically. I want to solve what's missing here. Everything is a symbol as far as I can tell. Is there anything on the stage here? Everything is a symbol. So let's get rid of this and see if I can tween. No, I can't. This is very odd. And I'm not going to pause the video because I can edit the video later. I want to know what's going on here. It's a symbol. It's a movie clip. That's a movie clip. They all have instance names. Okay. So let's do something else. Let's select this. And let's go to timeline, distribute to layers. And here something got revealed. Each of the letters got distributed and renamed. The layers got named according to the instance name. Now what's on layer 1? Something did not get converted. What was that? Let's make those. Okay, so modify timeline, distribute to layers. Okay, so I've got more things here, and here modify timeline, distribute to layers. Okay. So instance 3, and instance 3. So let's take this and we will hold down Alt and drag this into place here. Is that gonna work? Yes, it did work. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this keyframe. Alt and drag it into place. And we have this item, which is instance 3, and I will turn off the visibility for everything else. So can I do a classic tween here? I can. And what I'm gonna do is I'll demonstrate what happens when you have a tween in place already. If you move it, it creates a new in-between here, a new keyframe. And then it automatically interpolates, you see? And I can move this, and in fact I'll rotate it and I'll scale it by holding Alt and Shift constrains it. But if you hit Alt without the Shift, it does not constrain it, but it goes from the corner pin. If you hold Shift, it goes from the center. And if you hit Alt and Shift, it constrains it to the proportions. But you know, we've changed the proportions here, so watch it skew. See? And there's shortcuts you can use. I'll leave it up to you to explore those shortcuts. So that's animation. And I believe for the other objects, I would have to have each item on its own layer. So we drew objects on the stage and we got into animation a little bit, which was it's outside of the scope, but this is Adobe Animate, and it's important to know that because animation is a key component to anything you do on the computer with a user interface. This right here, this drop down menu, is an animation. This video that I'm talking to is an animation. It's a series of blitted camera images which while they're recording are being displayed here for me to see and for you to see as well, and is being blended to the memory. If I had a processor which was not powerful enough, this screen recording would be very jaggy. Okay, so let's go ahead and save our file because we haven't done that. And the first thing I should always do is save the file to a new name even before it begin working, which it was a no-no that I did that. Let's do lessons NMM. Okay, and see if you put an underscore, it goes to the top of the hierarchy. Lesson 1. Okay. Symbols, we touched on those, and I'll just briefly show you. These are all the different symbols that we created. It gives you a preview up here, which you can make larger. You can see animation in there. For example, one of these is should have an animation on it. Maybe not. Oh, but it has a use count. Yeah, in the old version of Flash, if you animated something, it would be it would show you a play thing up here, and then you would be able to play it. So what is this? Pen kind of library. Okay. New video. That's interesting. I didn't know you could import video. I didn't know you could import video in the new version of Flash. You can export video. New version of Animate. So let's import something actually. In fact, I'll drag something out from the library, and there it is. I could drag this out. You see? And let's undo those two items. Yeah. Okay. So let's make a new file. Dialog comes up. I've got a slow computer, and we'll choose another Air for Android, and we'll leave the defaults. And I'm gonna draw something on the stage. I'll change the color. Actually, that's okay. So I'll change the color now. Okay. And we'll just leave it at that, and we'll export this image. This comes up. It comes from the Save for Web from Photoshop, and we're gonna save it as a JPEG. It's optimized, and you can change the matte background because you saw that the stage was white over here, but I'm gonna choose, let's choose black. Let's see what happens. Let's choose the eyedropper color. The eyedropper color must be black because it didn't change, and we'll change it to blue. And we'll change the quality to something really low, and we'll blur it. Okay. Just so you can see the difference of what happens here. Preview. Let's see what happens. Maybe the web browser comes up. Yeah. And it gives you a little feedback. In the address bar, you see where on your file system it resides. The information window tells you in a web page what is going on here. So this is HTML. HTML is a type of XML. extensible markup language. And so that's that. So we will save this. A dialog box comes up, and Untitled 4, we'll leave it at that because we did not. Okay, yeah, we didn't save this file, so we'll save it as Untitled 4 also. And we will go back to the other file and import. Can we import from here? Import this. We'll import to the stage, and in fact, we will create a new layer for that. We'll import it to the stage. I'm going to File and going to the drop-down menu, and here I will find Lessons National Media Museum. We'll open this, and there it is. That's the JPEG. And because it's a bitmap, you can go here to modify, and you should be able to, can you trace it? Bitmap, trace bitmap. Okay, so now it's become a vector item. And if you want to do frame by frame animation on vectors, you have to either code a power tool which will run through each frame and automatically convert it as an action, or you have to manually convert each frame a single frame at a time. And if you have 1,000 frames, you got to do 1,000 actions manually with the mouse, like what I just did. It's very redundant, but sometimes the results are preferred over trying to have a heavy bitmap that you're working with, because vectors are very crisp, and the advantage of vectors is that you have better visibility on an object, even though the math might bog down your system if you have too many vectors. That happened with the MTA's website for maps on Metropolitan Transit Authority. They don't know what they're doing, and they always bog you down with heavy maps that can't be displayed on your phone in some instances, depending on what kind of phone you have. Right. And I gotta test out my tablet to see. Okay, so my back is killing me now. I've got a strain back here, but I cannot use the medication that my doctor prescribed because it says specifically that that's for arthritis and not for back, hip, or shoulders. And I've got pain in my shoulders, so in the muscles. I should have had Bengay or something. Right, so why did I do this? Okay, so I've got that imported here. Let's instead. Oh, by the way, yeah. When you want to see the outlines, you click on there, and if you want to make it invisible, click on the eye. If you want to lock the layer, can I still delete a keyframe? No, I can't. When it's locked, I can't delete it. Wait a minute. Wait. If it's not visible, I can't delete it either. Wait a minute. So let me see. Nope, can't delete it if it's not visible. But if I have it selected and it becomes pale like that, then I can delete it and the keyframe gets dark. We'll undo that. And I wanted to make this into a stage object. Into a library object. So I'm going to go ahead and convert this to a symbol by having it highlighted. Got another symbol here, and then I can drag out the same symbol right next to each other. Remember, we have to have a separate separate layer for animation purposes, and you can paste it into place too. I chose not to, but there's a shortcut key in Adobe Illustrator which pastes in place rather efficiently, whereas you've got to use too many fingers in this package. So I will insert a keyframe, timeline keyframe, and it inserted it on both places. So now I can move this, I can move that, create a classic tween. Here I'll create a motion tween and see what happens. Nothing happened because the motion tween has to happen on the last frame, and you have to interactively drag it for the best results. And I will remove this frame. I'm doing right click and then remove the frame, boom, and here I will insert a frame. So it goes to the end, and notice that that keyframe didn't move. Now I click and drag and I can move the keyframe. Alright, so we'll create a motion tween here also. Notice that when I right clicked here, I was not able to select classic tween or shape tween because I already had motion tween on that layer. So here I'm gonna move this here, and I'll go ahead and rotate it. And I think I was able to see if I could do a 3D tween. What's a 3D tween? I don't know. A 3D tween must be. Let's find out. Let's find out. Okay, so let me. Okay, so I've manipulated it in 3D space. Can I make it more stable? Okay, so there was a 3D tween, but it didn't do anything. So let's. Okay, that's 3D tween, but why didn't it do anything? Let's see. Well, that's something I have to investigate. I've never done 3D tweens before, but here we can do another classic tween, and things are moving on the stage. Exporting footage, we talked about that briefly because we drew this and we had to export. Publishing Adobe Air for Android and desktop. Let me pause this video and come back in another segment so that you can digest this easily and not be overwhelmed, because we should have broken this up into a second part. So I'll be back after you have a chance to review what I told you.